Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're looking at moments from the A Quiet Place franchise that left us screaming for those who cannot. This means spoilers for all three films. Number 20, Monopoly, A Quiet Place. Set in a near future where noise-sensitive creatures run rampant, this film centers on the Abbott family, who must live in seclusion and remain quiet at all times. The kids keep themselves occupied by playing Monopoly, which seems like a safe enough activity. Their fates are nearly sealed with a roll of the dice, however, as Marcus accidentally knocks over a lantern. Cool under even the most heated circumstances, Lee quickly puts out the fire. But that doesn't make it any less nerve-wracking as we wait to see if the coast is clear. Although they remain safe and sound, this scene demonstrates how even playing a simple board game is a risk in this dangerous setting. Number 19, The Milbrook Invasion, A Quiet Place Part 2. The sequel commences by taking us back to the beginning right before the aliens invaded. Yes, it's confirmed here that these monsters are not originally from our planet. Although we already know who will survive this flashback, the opening isn't lacking in tension. It's like waiting for a bomb to go off, knowing there's no way to defuse it. As a lighthearted baseball game is interrupted by a fiery object in the sky, the sequence escalates from tranquil to uncertain trepidation to all-out panic.
It's okay, baby. Mom.
The invasion is presented through shifting perspectives as Evelyn dodges an out-of-control bus while Reagan flees from what she can't hear. One man prays, but Lee gives the first indication that silence is the key to salvation and survival. Number 18, Bloody Hand, A Quiet Place. As a movie with little dialogue, A Quiet Place is largely carried by its haunting visuals and emotive performances. With his wife going into labor, his kids missing, and a monster loose, Lee still manages to remain focused as he investigates the darkly lit house. It appears all hope is lost as he follows a trail of bloody footprints upstairs and uncovers an empty bathtub with more traces of blood. As the grief-stricken Lee lets his defenses down, both he and the audience are caught off guard when a bloody hand slams on the shower door. We're all able to let out a sigh of relief as it's revealed that Evelyn and her newborn baby are alive. Number 17, The Monsters Take Manhattan, A Quiet Place Day 1. After the second film's opening flashback, we weren't sure if we needed a prequel further exploring the invasion's first day. Shifting the action to New York City provides a whole new perspective, however. New York is one of the biggest, most populated, and noisiest places on Earth. As such, this sequence ups the scale along with the tension, calling real-world tragedies like 9/11 to mind. In the blink of an eye, the metropolis surrounding Lupita Nyong'o's Sam blows up in her face. Of course, this is just one area of New York, with the military soon demolishing bridges to prevent the attacking monsters from spreading. To get off the island alive, you have to be as quiet as a mouse, even if you're a cat.
You can't have a cat in here.
It's a service cat.
Number 16, Crying Baby, A Quiet Place. The birth of Lee and Evelyn's son is one of the few joyous moments in the film. This happy occasion also creates some obvious problems, though, as newborns have a tendency to cry. There's no time to waste as Lee rushes both his exhausted wife and baby to a soundproof basement. Although they make it underground just before the prowling creature catches them, the paranoia doesn't end there. Lee is forced to place the little one in an insulated coffin with an oxygen mask to keep him breathing. With so much that could potentially go wrong, this scene will most certainly get under your skin whether you're a protective parent or simply claustrophobic. Number 15, Marina Attack, A Quiet Place Part 2. The creatures might be the most lethal threat, but they aren't the only ones to be cautious of. Arriving at the dock, Reagan and Emmett are ambushed by a silent yet deadly group of humans, including a creepy little girl. We never learn who these people were before the invasion, but there's zero humanity in the ringleader's eyes. Robbing strangers for supplies is one thing, although based on how he looks at Reagan, the ringleader is prepared to do much worse. To stop one enemy, Emmett draws out another. It's a risky move that seals the ringleader's fate, yet nearly leaves Emmett choking in the water. Just when it looks like a scene from Jaws will be reenacted, Emmett exposes one of the monster's weaknesses. Number 14. Marcus finds Emmett's wife. A Quiet Place Part 2. Emmett was a family man like Lee before the invasion left him alone.
Now he's gone.
Upon allying with his old friends the Abbotts, Emmett is reluctant to discuss his tragedy in detail. Poor Marcus is given a first-hand look at the psychological scars Emmett has been living with, however. Left alone in the hideout with only his newborn sibling, Marcus decides to investigate the area. Looking around, Marcus finds photos and drawings of Emmett's young son. While that's unsettling enough, the true trauma resides behind a curtain. Pulling it back, Marcus uncovers the rotting body of Emmett's wife in a bed. We imagine that Emmett wanted to give his wife a peaceful resting place, but there's no comfort to be found here. Number 13. Truck Attack. A Quiet Place. After losing one child, Lee refuses to watch any of his other family members die. This builds to a terrifying, not to mention tragic scene in which a monster tracks down Reagan and Marcus inside a truck, influencing Lee to make the ultimate sacrifice. Before shifting the creature's attention away from his children, Lee signs his final heartfelt words to Reagan. The audience is left completely speechless as Lee lets out a brave scream and the beast charges after him. What makes Lee's death especially gut-wrenching is that it could have been avoided had Reagan known at the time that her cochlear implant was the key to fending off these creatures. Number 12. Running Out of Air. A Quiet Place Part 2. Fleeing from a creature, Marcus seals himself and his little sibling in a compartment. It seems like the ideal hiding place, although there are two drawbacks. The handle can accidentally lock people inside, and oxygen is limited. It isn't until they start running out of air that Marcus realizes they're trapped. Evelyn isn't far away, but before she can save her children, she has to lure away a roaming monster. While Evelyn engulfs the creature in flames, it's the sprinkler system that allows her to sneak by. Every breath Marcus and the baby take could be their last, leaving the audience breathless until Evelyn arrives just in time. Even then, the monster remains outside. The Abbotts are more careful with the door this time, though. Number 11. Screaming Old Man. A Quiet Place. As cautious as the Abbott family is, there are some unforeseen circumstances that can't be prepared for. Making their way through the woods, Lee and Marcus encounter an old man standing over his wife's corpse. Part of what makes this moment so jarring is that these characters come out of nowhere, and we never learn their backstory. The shocked, devastated look on the old man's face tells us everything we need to know, however. Unable to keep it together, he lets out a scream, while Lee and Marcus run for their lives. You can tell from the expression on the old man's face that he's accepted his fate, as a creature ambushes him from behind. Number 10. Radio Station. A Quiet Place Part 2. Whereas the first film's ending seemed to wrap up everything, Part 2 revealed that there was still a long road ahead. Sure, the Abbotts now know how to defeat the monsters, but how to get the word out? The fate of the world depends on Reagan and Emmett reaching a radio station on a remote island. Even once inside, the final stretch isn't any less stressful. One wrong step means certain death. Emmett is ready to sacrifice himself for Reagan, but she isn't about to watch another father figure die. Armed with her cochlear implant and a pipe, Reagan goes live, slaying the beast. Reagan doesn't realize it, but her actions save her family from a close call as Marcus stands up to another creature. Number 9. Bo at the Bridge, A Quiet Place. Reagan attempts to bring a little fun into her 4-year-old brother's life by giving him a toy rocket early on. She didn't count on Bo taking batteries from the store, though. Our hearts sank and our spines stiffened as Bo obviously activates the noisy toy on a bridge. Lee races after his son, but the creature lurking in the trees is faster. This not only serves as a brilliant introduction to the monsters, it also establishes up front that the film is not afraid to kill off children. Bo's demise sticks with the audience for the rest of the movie, constantly reminding us that these characters could be torn to shreds at the drop of a pin. Number 8. A Door and a Hard Place, A Quiet Place Day 1. Even in a city as vast as New York, it can feel like there's nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Teaming up with a stranger named Eric, Sam finds herself being chased by monsters yet again.
We can help each other. We have to get out of the city.
Proving craftier than he looks, Eric distracts at least one alien by chucking an object through a car window.
Run.
Just when it appears that Sam and Eric have given them the slip, they find themselves caught in a revolving door with a briefcase blocking their way. The two can't go back, but pushing forward is sure to spark unwanted attention. Eric ventures through, and unfortunately, the briefcase makes a thud even louder than expected. Not as loud as the aliens crashing through the glass ceiling, however. Number 7. Flooded Basement, A Quiet Place. When Evelyn and her newborn seek refuge in the basement, it's panic-inducing to say the least. The filmmakers only pile onto the stressful situation when Evelyn wakes up to discover the basement flooding. We feel all of Evelyn's dread as a stream of water overflows around her infant son's cradle, with a creature scavenging in the background. The red lighting just adds to the trauma we're experiencing. Carefully retrieving the baby, Evelyn restrains herself from screaming as the creature emerges out of the water right in front of her. Fortunately, Evelyn is able to use the environment to her advantage as she hides behind the pouring water, blocking out her baby's cries. Number 6. Island Attack, A Quiet Place Part 2. For the first time in perhaps the entire franchise, at least 2 main characters appear safe. Reagan and Emmett have made it to an island where the community welcomes them. For a brief period, they return to normalcy without a monster in sight. Since the monsters can't swim, the only way one could get to the island is if it hitched a ride on a boat. Well, that's exactly what happens. Although, to be honest, we didn't even consider that possibility until the attack was already underway. The false sense of security makes the whiplash all the more jolting. With no time to waste, Reagan and Emmett drive away with an island inhabitant, who sadly won't live to see any sequels. Maybe a prequel, though. Number 5. Drowning in Silo, A Quiet Place. What's more horrifying than drowning in water? How about drowning in a grain silo? In this ingeniously shot sequence, Marcus plummets down a silo's hatch door, and Reagan dives in after him. Grain entrapment is more common than you may think, which makes the scene more relatable, and therefore more alarming. Both children almost suffocate as they sink into the sea of corn. While the siblings pull through together, their problems are just getting started. The noise attracts one of the monsters, which comes crashing into the silo. Reagan inadvertently chases it off by changing the frequency on her implant, but the monster leaves a giant hole in the silo and plenty of emotional scars. Number 4. The Opening, A Quiet Place. From its opening scene, A Quiet Place submerges the viewer into an unrelenting state of anxiety. That's primarily because it drops us in the middle of a seemingly abandoned town, where all hell apparently broke loose. A wall of missing persons posters informs us that this place has been riddled with death and tragedy. From there, we're introduced to the few lucky survivors as they search for supplies. It's also established that Reagan is deaf as we shift between her perspective and her brother's, exemplifying this movie's remarkable use of sound and sound editing. Although we don't entirely know what's happening yet, the foreboding atmosphere is enough to make us shudder in our seats. Number 3. The Train, A Quiet Place Part 2. Striking out on her own, Reagan follows railroad tracks and a trail of bloody shoes to a derailed train that never reached its final destination. The sight of dead passengers might have startled Reagan about 474 days ago. At this point, though, little phases Reagan outside of a sudden monster attack. That said, it isn't long until Reagan is subjected to one of the most effective jump scares in the series. Just when it appears Reagan can take a breather, a creature closes in with her pressed against a door. Reagan protects herself with a sneaker and a shotgun, but Emmett delivers the blow that saves her. Although Reagan has come a long way, it becomes clear that stopping the apocalypse is a two-person job, minimum. Number 2. The Bear Trap, A Quiet Place Part 2. Picking up where the first film left off, Part 2 establishes up front that it won't be smooth sailing moving forward. Heading into the unknown, the Abbotts try to be meticulous with every movement. Yet Evelyn fails to notice a wire that triggers a trap. Once those bottles rattle, a monster is bound to follow. Running scared, Marcus hits another trap, this one far more painful. Every noise in this series ignites dread, although the sound of the bear trap closing on Marcus's foot makes us want to scream in agony with him. All the while, a stranger with a sniper watches. The question isn't whether he'll shoot, it's whether he'll come to their aid. Thankfully, Emmett leads them to safety, with a monster not far behind. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The Nail, A Quiet Place. This sequence is simply a perfect storm of terror, in which everything that could possibly go wrong for these characters slowly unfolds. Evelyn goes into labor early while alone at the house, which would be distressing even without any deadly monsters about. It's impossible not to cringe as Evelyn steps on an exposed nail, causing her to drop a fragile picture frame. She summons the strength to signal her family, but a creature has already arrived at the house. Words cannot describe just how petrifying it is watching Evelyn give birth in a bathtub while Marcus sets off fireworks far away as a distraction. We'll just let the intense imagery speak for itself. Which moment left you speechless? Let us know in the comments. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.